mean, I think patience is underestimated. It's not talked about enough. And I think patience in every aspect of our life, it doesn't matter whether it's our personal life, our professional life, for our financial life, our emotional life. I mean, we have to be patient and not be in a rush. And by exercising that patience, which leads directly into the whole delayed gratification subject, but when we're patient, I truly feel that patience itself is a superpower that can really accelerate our growth exponentially.
Hello, and welcome to episode 206 of the Quiet and Strong podcast, especially for introverts. I'm your host, David Hall, and the creator of quietandstrong.com. It's a weekly podcast dedicated to understanding the strengths and needs of introverts, along with strategies for success. Introversion is not something to fix, but to be embraced. Normally, we'll air each episode on a Monday. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform. Leave a review or a rating. That would mean a lot to me and also help others find the show. Tell a friend about the podcast and help get the word out there that introversion is a beautiful thing. Dr. Emilio Justo, a Cuban refugee as a child, turned trailblazing ophthalmologist and cosmetic surgeon, has built a remarkable legacy of excellence over 3 decades. He has performed nearly 50,000 procedures since founding the Arizona Eye Institute and Cosmetic Laser Center. Dr. Justo is a globally celebrated two-time TEDx speaker. His 2023 talk, Delayed Gratification, Your Superpower to Success, became the third most viewed TEDx video that year. His follow-up 2024 talk, The Obsession Advantage to Unprecedented Success, captivated audience worldwide, with both talks garnering a combined total of over 10 million views. These transformative insights are further explored in his #1 Amazon bestseller, The Power of Pause: Mastering Delayed Gratification for Success. All right. Well, welcome to the Quiet and Strong podcast, Dr. Emilio Justo. Dr. Justo, it's so great to have you on today.
Thank you so very much, David. It's a pleasure and privilege, and I'm greatly looking forward to chatting with you and your audience.
Awesome. So, we're going to get into the book you've written and some TED Talks that you've done. But first, just tell us about yourself. Tell us about your journey to the work that you're doing now.
Yeah, so my journey is perhaps interesting to some, maybe boring to others, but I'm a Cuban refugee, came to the United States with my parents at the tender age of 3. We settled in Gary, Indiana originally. The church organizations that were resettling Cuban immigrants settled us to Gary, not to Miami, as many Cubans fled to. My grandparents came over a few months later from Cuba, and they settled with their church organization to a little college town in northwest Missouri called Tarkio College. While my parents and I were in Gary, my father had to work 2 full-time jobs. My mother, who had her doctorate in education from the University of Havana, relocated 3 hours south to Bloomington, Indiana, where Indiana University is, to restudy all her credentials in a foreign language. And so my parents made the difficult and courageous decision to send me to Missouri with my grandparents to grow up with them from kindergarten through 4th grade while my parents were acclimating and getting resettled. And then in 5th grade, we all moved back to Indiana and grew up there through the end of high school. Went to University of Michigan after that, to college and medical school, then Washington, D.C. to do my ophthalmology residency. And then finally, at the tender young age of 27, I came to the Phoenix, Arizona area to establish my ophthalmology medical and surgical practice. And I'm now in my 36th year of full-time practice. Hard to believe. Time has gone by in a heartbeat, but that's where we are. And then there have been a lot of trials and tribulations along the way, some of which we may get into later.
Yeah, wow. Thank you for sharing your amazing journey and your accomplishments. And that's really what we're going to talk about today is, how people can overcome challenges and become successful and set some goals and things like that. But also, you shared with me you're a fellow introvert. So let's just talk about that for a second here. What is
Sure.
a strength that you have because you're an introvert?
Well, David, as an introvert, I'm also, let me first start out. I'm an only child, right? So, and my parents made that decision because of being Cuban refugees. We didn't have really any money. We just came over with the clothes on our back, and my parents wanted to be able to provide fully for me and not have to provide for a number of different children. But growing up as an only child, I think that contributed perhaps to me being an introvert. And part of it, I think, is DNA. I think that introvert versus extrovert, some of it is just pre-wired in our DNA. But I view, David, my strength as an introvert lying in kind of what I call reflection and depth. I'm kind of naturally drawn to introspection. So I kind of analyze situations thoroughly. I try to, as best as possible, I'm flawed like all human beings, but I try to make thoughtful decisions. And so, this strength has been valuable or invaluable, both not only as a surgeon, but also as a thought leader, and also as I think a great listener. One of my attributes as a physician is I really, really try to listen to my patients to connect deeply with them as I do with my audiences. Not all physicians do that, right? I think nowadays the typical physician jumps in and out of the exam room within minutes and really doesn't listen to their patients, which I think is a significant drawback.
Yeah, yeah. And so we definitely talk about strengths and, your deep thinking. That's got to be a major factor of your success, the ability to reflect, like you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that to me, and I think as a fellow introvert, David, you can appreciate the fact that to me, I enjoy my quiet time. I'm okay being by myself. I mean, actually, today, as we're recording this, I'm not 100% by myself because I do have my daughter, my 13-year-old daughter here in the house, but my wife and 17-year-old are out of town, as I alluded to before we went on the air. And and in a sense, I kind of am enjoying it because I like the downtime. Yeah, I'll spend a little bit of time with my daughter later today, but she knows that I'm recording this interview with you, and then I'm going to be working on some other projects, and the peacefulness is just something that I enjoy so much. I don't need to have all this stuff going on around me all the time, like our 20-year-old. Our 20-year-old is just the opposite. He wants to be surrounded by action all the time, wants to be with friends, wants to be out and about. He's a great socializer, and I'll give him that. I will socialize, but it's not necessarily what I'm drawn to. I will do it at the right opportunity in the right moment, but I'm actually drawn to just chilling and reflecting and being inside my own head, if that makes
Yeah.
sense to you.
Oh, absolutely. And so we need some time to do our work, you know. We need some time to recharge, but also we enjoy it, like you're saying. And I think that's an important point to make. But of course, I know like you love your family. You like spending time with your family and
Right.
others. And that's definitely a myth that a myth that I bust regularly on the show is that introverts don't like people. We absolutely like people, but we also do need some downtime and we have to find that kind of balance.
Yeah, because, David, and I think you'll again relate to this, is that I think a big myth that we oftentimes hear or people perceive about introverts like ourselves is that somehow it's a weakness or that we lack confidence. And, being an introvert isn't about being shy. It's actually, in my view, it's about being energized and having energy. I recharge through my solitude, not necessarily through social interaction. But that doesn't mean that I'm not capable of leadership or public speaking, right? I'll get out there on stage. I'll do the TEDx, and it invigorates me, but it's not who I am deep inside. And I think some of the world's greatest thought leaders, thinkers, leaders, I mean, when you look at people like Einstein and Gandhi, from what I've read, they were both introverts. So basically, I've kind of learned to channel my introversion into a source of strength and using that reflection and preparation to be able to excel in whatever I'm doing, whether it's in my surgery, in my physician, in my practice, or whether it's in my speaking or other types of leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And and that's the thing. So introversion doesn't equal shyness. An introvert or an extrovert can be shy, but the great thing is you can overcome if someone is shy, and not all introverts start out shy, but the ones that do, they can overcome that. And part of it is these kinds of things that we're talking about, embracing your strengths.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I probably, when I look back at my life when I was younger, I probably viewed myself as being a little bit shy. Not probably, I actually did. Now that I
Yeah.
think back, I did view myself as being shy. I don't really view myself as being shy anymore, but by no means. But yet, if I were at a social event or at a party or something like that, I'm not necessarily going to be the one with a group of people around me and telling jokes and having everyone laughing and chit-chatting around me. I'll probably be one of the ones in the group surrounding that person who is the hit of the crowd. At the same time, there's a side of me that wants that extroversion, right? I mean, when I'm giving that TEDx talk on stage, I mean, I've made a conscious decision that I want to be out there. And no matter how challenging it is and how nerve-wracking it is to step on stage, once I'm in that spotlight, man, I'm ready, willing, and able. So there is a side of me that likes to have the attention, right? I don't know if I shared this with you a few weeks ago when we spoke, but if I could design my own future life, I would love to host a TV show, or I would love to be a guest on a late night show or something like that, right? I crave the spotlight, as crazy as that sounds, being an introvert.
Not crazy at all. As introverts, another myth that I bust is that we don't have anything to say. We have lots to say because we're always thinking. And, I love public speaking. I used to get nervous. I don't anymore. And what I learned is, as an introvert, I just got to prepare for it. And I also have to manage my energy around it. But yeah, we absolutely might love and crave the spotlight, and because we have a lot to say.
Right. I agree with you.
So, what did make you decide to go to medical school and especially, specialize in being an eye surgeon?
Yeah, it's a combination of things, right? So the aspects and the philosophical aspects. So, from a practical standpoint, throughout my early life, I was always leaned towards science and math. I enjoyed those subjects. So, it kind of came naturally to me. And as I weighed different career paths, I kept circling back to medicine. At a certain point, like in high school, I remember I went on some drive-bys or drive-arounds with police officers thinking, oh, do I want to go into law enforcement, things like that. I also had a big leaning and passion about baseball. Being your stereotypical Cuban, I was very gifted in baseball and was a great high school pitcher. Actually, my teammate in high school actually did go into the major leagues and played for quite a number of years as a pitcher. But the practical aspect, I remember sitting down one Sunday afternoon with my parents discussing that goal, and they just calmly said to me, look, you can try and become a major league pitcher, and yeah, the rewards could be immense, but statistically speaking, the likelihood of you getting there is very low statistically. Or you can continue your path in science and medicine and do as you wish and continue on your education. And if you want to become a doctor, great. And statistically, the chances are much greater that you'll achieve that. And I kind of weighed those things, and I just made a conscious decision that they were correct. And I tend to be a little bit more conservative in my decision making, not always, but in most cases. And so I took the path of education, which my parents were always, they taught me not only the value of resilience and perseverance from being Cuban refugees, but they also always instilled in me a sense of how important education is, They were just firm believers. Even though my father was essentially not formally educated, my mother did have her doctorate in education in Cuba, so that they were kind of two sides of one coin. But they both fully agreed that education was key, and so it created that deep desire and that passion in me to serve others. I felt that medicine was a great way to do that. Initially, when I went to medical school, I actually thought for sure that I was going to go into obstetrics and gynecology. I mean, I did big projects in junior high and high school on, pregnancy and childbirth and blah, blah, blah. And I thought for sure. And then I get into medical school and I quickly realized, no, that's not for me, and didn't want to be up in the middle of the night. I like my sleep. And as I listened to other lectures and other attendings, interestingly, I observed attendings who talked about ophthalmology attendings, and I observed that they seemed to be very, what I felt were down to earth, very approachable, very humble people, not so much like other specialties that maybe are a little bit more arrogant, et cetera. And so I use that, believe it or not, to lead me into ophthalmology and cosmetic surgery.
Wow. So with all that said, you're a very busy guy with with your medical practice and your surgery. How did you find time to also devote yourself to the book that we're going to talk about and your two TED Talks?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me can try and not get into the weeds too far because I tend to ramble sometimes. But basically, the way the journey started, the first TEDx talk. So I'm basically sitting on my bike here at home and I'm pedaling away and I'm going through YouTube, just Googling stuff. And I see this little infomercial come out about an organization that helps individuals prepare for TEDx talks and how to apply for them, blah, blah, blah. And so I decided to kind of join this organization, and they gave the schematic whereby you should bullet point your talks, not pre-write it. And then they went through the application process, which is quite exhaustive. And they did say, listen, it takes on average 90 applications to land one talk. So I start going through the process and I decided, okay, I'm going to do this. This is exciting. It's exhilarating. Because I don't really have time during the work week since I'm so busy at work, I devoted every single weekend for 2 months straight, so 8 weekends, to filling out applications, which is really exhaustive. And after 86 applications, it was time to go on a summer family vacation. And so we went to Western Canada. So we're there, we're sitting having lunch. I remember it's July 5th, 2023. We're having lunch outside in Banff, Alberta, Canada. I get a phone call and it's inviting me to this TEDx talk to give the talk. However, the issue is that the talk is in 5 weeks and I still have another week of vacation with my family. So I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I'm not going to turn it down, right? I mean, my gosh, I've been offered this talk. There's no way in God's green earth I'm going to turn it down. But I'm thinking, man, by the time we get home, I'm going to have 4 weeks to write this talk, to practice this talk, to memorize this talk, and then to deliver this talk. That's a lot in 4 weeks. But I did it. And then I was blessed enough, the talk came out very quickly because sometimes these talks come out on YouTube, 6 months later. But my talk came out 6 weeks after giving it, and it started doing very, very well. And so as we approached the holidays that year, my wife said, gosh, your talk is doing so well, you should consider writing a book. I've never written a book before, and I thought, okay, I'm going to set my mind to it. I'm going to start devoting time to this. I found a mentor who kind of helped me initially to kind of formulate my thoughts. And I just started on this process of writing the book, which is, as you know, The Power of Pause, Mastering Delayed Gratification for Success. But as I'm writing the book, I then get the itch to perhaps do a second TEDx talk. And I kind of got a lead from a thought leader who just put out on his email blast saying, hey, such and such a TEDx Western U, which is Western University in Ontario, Canada, is opening up their applications for their next TEDx talk. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll go ahead and apply. And next thing I know, a couple weeks later, they invite me for a Zoom interview. And then after the Zoom interview, a couple weeks later, they accept me. And then I'm back to the drawing board. I'm back to writing a new talk. This one was, as you may know, on obsession, the positive aspects of obsession. And so the first time around, I was accepted after submitting 86 applications. The second time around, I got lucky and I was one for one.
All right. And congratulations. I looked at the counts today and one was at 7 million and the other was at 3.5 million. And that is just, that's amazing. So
Uh,
congratulations
thank,
on those.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. I haven't looked recently. I need to look to be able to respond to the comments because any comments that I get, I like to personally respond to, and I haven't done so in a couple weeks. Shame on me.
So what does the power of the pause mean?
Yeah. So basically, it's that phraseology is born from my own journey of what I call really sacrifice and long-term vision. And for me, being a Cuban refugee, a Cuban immigrant, it's just what I dealt with in my life. I didn't think about it. I didn't say, oh, I'm going to pause. I didn't tell myself this. This was just my journey that evolved. So that power of pause, which is essentially that delayed gratification, is what I define as the ability to resist the immediate rewards for a later, often greater reward and greater future benefits, which in my mind is the superpower behind every significant achievement in my life. Because as I was writing that first TEDx talk, I was really reflecting back and I wanted to leave a legacy for my family, for my children in particular, and if down the road, if I have grandchildren, I wanted to leave a legacy in terms of my life. As we get older, David, and I'm probably older than you, but as we get older, at least in my world, I start reflecting on my life and the challenges that I've had, what I've been able to overcome. And so, I have this sense of mortality. I'm not going to be around forever. When you're young, like our 20-year-old, right? He just thinks that he can just do anything and he'll be around forever. But I think about it now that hopefully I'll be around another 30 years or so, I hope. But nothing is guaranteed in life. And so I think I wanted to leave this legacy. And as I pondered my life, again, as an introvert, through that introspection, I felt that I had this, what I have coined my Cuban triad, which is self-discipline. Number two is a combination of perseverance and resilience. And number three is delayed gratification. And originally, I wanted to write that talk on that Cuban triad. But one of my mentors said, no way, it's just way too long to go into three things in 10 or 12 minutes. So I chose delayed gratification because I thought that that really encapsulated much of my life.
Yeah. And I had asked you about this when we spoke before, how you learn to embrace delayed gratification, but as you just shared, you had to, it was something that, in your circumstances, you had a lot of challenges to overcome, and it was something that you had to do. But now you want to share it with others.
That
Um,
is correct.
what, your kids are definitely a motivator, other people. What's an example of something, maybe a young person that's, starting out trying to figure out what to do with their life? What is an example of delayed gratification that you have?
Well, I think first, I mean, it's so many examples, and let me see if I can summarize it. That I think one needs, and it's a difficult concept to preach and to teach. I will grant you that, David, because I mean, having three young kids, as yours are a little bit older, but having a 20-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 13-year-old, I talk to them about this, and they acknowledge it on the surface, but they, in my view, practice it. And so, I haven't been as successful as I would like to in terms of teaching this. But Basically, I think that one needs to be able to resist those temptations. One needs to strategize and create a big, bold, long-term goal. But in addition to the big long-term goal, there's going to be smaller goals along the way to have us achieve, and achieving those smaller goals, then we want to celebrate those victories and those wins to juice us and to give us positive feedback to continue our journey, because it's really all about the journey. It's not about the destination. If we set up a good enough long-term goal and a lofty enough long-term goal, that journey is going to be lifelong. I mean, really, in my mind, we're never really going to get to that destination. And that's a good thing, because we want to keep striving in our life. We don't want to ever settle. So in terms of what young people can do, I mean, it could be simple things like, for example, I'll use a very personal example. I hope my son doesn't mind. If he listens to this, he's probably gonna shoot me. But but our 20-year-old just recently went to some sort of, I don't even know the name of it, but there's some sort of like 3-day concert festival type thing that he went to here in the Phoenix area. And he's been looking forward to it for months, and I get it. I get it. But man, it's super expensive. I mean, it like just the tickets alone were, I think, $350. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, I don't spend $350, or if I do, it's pretty rare that I do for a concert. And so in my view, the priorities aren't there, because I mean, he'll work a little part-time job when he's at home, because he's away at college. He's at home. He's working at a restaurant, etc. But blowing that kind of money on something that is just a big 3-day dopamine rush, giving that instant gratification. I mean, you should spend that kind of money when you really have it to spend. But you should be saving. In my view, I'm an old school conservative guy, David. Now, I'm proud to say that, and I think he should be saving his money for those bigger things, saving his money for an apartment, saving his money for a car, saving his money rather than basically pissing away money just for that short-term instant gratification. That's my view. Now, I get it. He's a youngster. I was a youngster. We all want those instant fuels, but I think better choices can be made. Like, for example, I talk about in my book the fact, and this is a small example, that when I was in college and medical school at the University of Michigan, and for those football aficionados in your audience, right, they would know that the Michigan Wolverines are one of the blue blood college football programs, who of course won the national championship in 2024. Thank you very much. But so I'm in college, and back then, season football tickets for students at the University of Michigan, I remember to this day, were $36, and it was for a 6-pack of tickets. So it was 6 games. So it was basically $6 a game. It was $36 for the entire season, if you can imagine. But I made the conscious decision. I mean, I think during my college years, I think I attended one football game. I made the decision to sell my tickets, to scalp them. And for that $36 that I spent, which of course was money that was given to me by my parents because I didn't have a job, I would bank $250, which was a lot of money back in the early 1980s. And so I would have that $250 that I could then use for other things. I could use, instead of eating the dorm foods that you get tired of, I could on a weekend get pizza or go to a restaurant, or even, have a beer or what have you. So I made that conscious decision to delay that gratification. And so now, of course, many years later, as I have a successful career, what other people might define as success, now I go back 2 or 3 times a year. I take my family, we go to football games, and I'm on the other end of scalping. I'm buying the tickets, and I'm buying 50-yard line tickets every time we go back. I mean, I don't go to a game unless it's on the 50-yard line. And I go back 2 or 3 times a year and I'm enjoying the games now. Now that's a lot of years of delayed gratification, mind you, but it's one small example of delaying that instant gratification that I could have had in college just going to the games.
Yeah. And you were talking about long-term goals and the importance of that. So I think, that's my take is you really just have to weigh out, okay, so, we're all going to want to do fun things here and there, but how does this thing, can you afford a $350 concert? And how is that going to impact your immediate goals and your long-term goals? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's exactly what I'm saying. Now, he afforded it simply because he had some money and every holiday season, every birthday, we put in a little money, not a lot, but we put in a little money in his bank account. So he had just enough money to get by, but and just in my mind, I don't think that's a judicious usage of your money. But I know that as a young 20-year-old, you want that fun. You want to be with your friends. You want to be partying and up all night listening to crazy music. Okay, I get it, but I don't agree with it. I mean, I just don't. I can't buy into that. I'm sorry. I mean, that's just who I am.
Yeah, yeah. And again, you got to weigh it all out. But this is when this recording comes out, this is a time people traditionally set goals, long term, short term. Do you have a process for setting goals? What are your recommendations to people to set goals?
Well, number one, I would say that, as I was alluding to earlier, you want to set a big, lofty, long-term goal. I think a critical mistake that all of us make, including myself, is that sometimes we set our goals and we shortchange ourselves by not making them big enough. I think we need to have a big long-term goal, but then within that long-term goal, we need to set smaller goals to get us in that right journey. Because these long-term goals, David, give our life direction and purpose. If we don't have those long-term goals, we're just kind of just wading in the waters and we're not really getting anywhere. We're just kind of paddling away and the waves are just throwing us up and down. So these long-term goals are kind of the compass that keep us aligned even when the journey gets tough. So we have to start with clarity and defining what truly, truly matters to us or to me. Then we break down those goals, as I said earlier, into smaller milestones and then commit to disciplined, consistent action, right? That consistency is key because it's very easy when we encounter a setback or even a failure, it's very easy to just get deflated and get negative, and all of a sudden we've lost track and lost motivation and lost focus. And we can't, we have to stay disciplined and consistent and committed. I know it's easier said than done, but really that's what we have to stay focused on and reflecting on the progress along the way that keeps us motivated and focused. As I said earlier, celebrating those small wins along the way so that we reinvigorate ourselves to keep on that path. So having those long-term goals, in my view, are the ultimate act of self-discipline to stay anchored to your long-term vision.
Yeah. So you were just talking about setbacks and challenges. I know in your book you share some very personal examples of that. At the same time, it's a part of life. We've both been through plenty of setbacks and challenges, but sometimes it's harder, for people that are our kids' age or any age to realize that's a part of life. Why are setbacks and challenges so important for our growth?
I view setbacks, David, as really opportunities in disguise, right? So a setback is really a temporary step back and an ability then to propel us forward into the next chapter of our lives. We all have setbacks, we all have failures, and these should be embraced. I mean, they truly should. I know at the time, at the moment, it doesn't feel that way, but we should really view every setback, every failure as a lesson that we can then learn from to achieve success. And resilience, in my view, is the ability to adapt, to recover, and to thrive despite adversity. And to build that resilience, we have to first reframe these challenges and these setbacks and these failures as growth opportunities. You got to reflect, right? As introverts, we have to reflect and then ask ourselves, what is the message here? What is this teaching us? What is it teaching me? And then secondly, something I firmly believe in is that we have to practice gratitude daily, right? We have to be grateful. We're all blessed. I mean, no matter if our life is crumbling around us, I firmly believe that we all have things that we should be grateful for. And practicing that gratitude shifts our focus from what's wrong to what's right. And then lastly, to have that resilience, it certainly can be helpful if we have a strong support system around us, whether that's family, friends, mentors. But as I do mention in my book, that support system, it can be a little dicey, a little tricky, because sometimes the support system that we think is a true support system can actually be a negative. I mean, we automatically think, for example, of our family as being our support. Well, it may be, but quite oftentimes our family members who may love us and who may want the best for us may actually pull us back and may actually feed negativity into our goals and into our desires. They may say things, right? We've all heard, oh, why are you spending so much time on that? You have better things to do. Or oh, David, you're never going to achieve that. I mean, why don't you set a more realistic goal, right? So these are people who love you, who think that they're doing you a service, but who are actually dragging you down. And so when you're looking for advice from other people and from other mentors, I mean, it's really ideal if you can find somebody who's actually walked the talk and who's succeeded, right? And so that you can emulate and learn from their experiences. Because it's very easy for people around you who may love you because they're a friend or a family member, but they haven't achieved the things that you're wanting to achieve. So they may inadvertently, not maliciously, but they may inadvertently drag you down because they haven't had those achievements in their life. And so you're listening to people who haven't achieved. And that's not the people you want to be listening to. You want to learn from those people who you can emulate and who you can use their words of wisdom because they've walked that talk. They've crossed that path themselves.
Yeah. And definitely you can find real life people out there, but you can also find a little mentorship just by listening to a podcast such as this and hearing stories from guests like yourself that have achieved. But definitely, we need some real people in our lives. But I love how you put that, because there's going to be people that don't believe in the goals that you have, and you
Right.
just have to find those that do, and hopefully you do have some people like that that believe in the goals that you have. And yeah, I've been through that myself.
I think we all have, truly.
Yeah. So with resilience, you talked about that, accepting, understanding, embracing the fact that setbacks are a part of life, being grateful, finding the right people to support you. Is there anything else you want to say about really developing that resilience?
Well, again, I think it begins with self-discipline, right? Right. You have to be disciplined. Again, that was part of my Cuban triad that I mentioned earlier. That to me, as I reflect back on my life, some of these things have, just for my own purposes, I feel have just come to me innately. I mean, maybe it's been wired in my DNA. I mean, I've always felt that I've been a very, very self-disciplined person. I mean, have I faltered? Have I deviated from that path at times? Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm as flawed as any other human being. But to have that resilience, we have to start with that self-discipline, which really begins with very small, consistent habits. And by committing to one small action every day that aligns with our goals, those small actions, David, as you know, will compound into success, right? It's the whole principle of compounding, whether we're talking in financial terms or whether we're talking in life terms, compounding is real. And you can, quote unquote, use the pun, you can take it to the bank. So another key is accountability, right? I mean, accountability, we have to be accountable to ourselves and to our own goals. We have to be accountable to other people, certainly, in our promises and the things that we preach. But with our own accountability, we have to be able to track our progress. And as I alluded to earlier, celebrate those wins. It's okay to celebrate. Not okay. We need to celebrate to juice us up and to give us that positive reinforcement. And then of course remind ourselves periodically of our own why. What is the passion? What is the purpose? Why are we doing this? Because if we can define our own internal why and define our passion, discipline becomes much easier, right? Because it's tied, that self-discipline is tied to a purpose inside of ourselves that inspires us. So it's not something that we have to fabricate externally. I mean, we have it wired in ourselves if we find that passion and that purpose in what I call in my second TEDx talk, that obsession, right? That positive obsession, not a negative obsession, not an OCD, psychologically strange obsession, but the positive obsession of having a passion and a purpose and a why behind what we're doing.
Yeah, I think that's the key. If you can develop the why, then you can set up all the other actions and think about, where you're going to be disciplined in what. And that's definitely something, if you don't know that, that's something like you've been talking a lot about the power of reflection. What is your why? I think that's the key to all of this.
Yes, absolutely, David. I couldn't agree with you more. And reflection, and also something I haven't directly commented on, but I'll take a moment to say is the concept of patience, right? I mean, they say patience is a virtue. Well, it really is. I mean, I think patience is underestimated. It's not talked about enough. And I think patience in every aspect of our life, it doesn't matter whether it's our personal life, our professional life, for our financial life, our emotional life. I mean, we have to be patient and not be in a rush. And by exercising that patience, which leads directly into the whole delayed gratification subject, but when we're patient, I truly feel that patience itself is a superpower that can really accelerate our growth exponentially. It may sound counterintuitive, but I think rather than being in a rush, and getting that dopamine hit that we constantly have to be doing something, oh, we can't waste a moment of time, got to constantly be doing and achieving. No, patience. Be patient. Think about what's going on around you. If someone says something to you that you don't like, don't just right away instantly jump on them. Pause and think about it and then respond accordingly. If we're motivated because we see something that we want to buy and it's super expensive, pause, reflect, be patient. Give it a few days, give it a week, circle back around, and then see if it's really still motivating. Because 9 times out of 10, a week later, when you think about it, it's not going to have the same impact, guaranteed. So patience, I think, is a key that we really, really need to exercise in our life, in every aspect of our life.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we're talking about achieving goals, I have one more question for you. So, we have to prioritize, what is our why, making the long-term goals. But how do you manage your time around that and your energy, especially as an introvert? Do you have any advice as far as that goes?
Yeah, it's a difficult challenge, I will readily admit. And, myself as an introvert, I've kind of learned to, I'd say, protect my own energy by structuring my time intentionally. So I kind of try to prioritize the things that are most important that I need to achieve during what I would say are more peak energy times. And for me, if it's outside of my medical practice world, I basically wait till the weekend because I'm in more peak energy as I am right now with you. I feel energized talking to you. I'm enjoying it. I can devote my full mental faculties to it. And then, I'm really learning more and more as the years go by to set boundaries for that rest and reflection. And I think part of it is just, I hate to say it, getting older, David, but I am much more rigid and structured about getting my rest, going to bed earlier, getting a good night's sleep, feeling more invigorated when I get up so that I can be more efficient in what I do. And then also the power of saying no to distractions and things that really don't align with my goals. I mean, I'll say no to all sorts of things. I'll say no to using my medical practice as an example. I have vendors and pharmaceutical companies and equipment companies that call in and want to set up meetings with me, and I just say no because I mean, yeah, I might be able to get a free meal out of it, but who cares? I mean, it's not aligning with my goal. It's not something that I'm going to pursue. So I protect my time. I mean, I really want to protect my time. It's either family needs that require my time, or it's my medical practice needs where I have to be there to operate on a patient, or if it's the personal things like what we're doing here today. These are what I would consider our personal needs that I want to do to bring goodwill and thought leadership to you, to your audience, to myself. So it's just a matter of prioritizing time.
Yeah, that's some good advice. So, Dr. Justo, this has been a wonderful conversation. Is there anything else that you want to share today?
No, I've enjoyed it immensely, David. I greatly appreciate the opportunity. It's wonderful to meet and chat with someone who's physically near to me geographically. And I would just say, if I may, to any of your viewers, if anyone does wish to learn more about me and what I'm working on a personal basis, or wants to communicate with me, the best way to do so is through my personal website, which is dremiliojusto.com, and that's spelled DREMILIOJUSTO.com. And on that personal website, I have links to my TEDx talks, to my book, to dozens of podcasts that I've appeared on, dozens of magazine articles that I've been in. There's a contact page there that you can fill out and ask any questions, and that information goes directly to my inbox, and I'm very efficient at answering all of that, usually the same day and certainly at the most within 24 hours. So I would leave that with your audience, that feel free to reach out to me and I'll be happy to respond.
Sounds great. And I will be sure to put that in the show notes. Thanks again. This has been a great conversation, very inspiring.
Thank you, David. I appreciate the opportunity and getting to know you, and thank your audience for listening.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to further connecting with you. Reach out at david@quietandstrong.com or check out the quietandstrong.com website, which includes blog posts and links to social media channels. Send me topics or guests you would like to see on the show. If you're interested in getting to know yourself better, there's now a free Type Finder personality assessment on the Quiet and Strong website. This free assessment will give you a brief report, including the 4-letter Myers-Briggs code, and you can also have the option of purchasing the full report if you'd like to learn more. I'll add a link to the show notes. So many great things about being an introvert, and we need those to be understood. Get to know your introverted strengths and needs and be strong.